there's this other piece too. And it's this piece around preparing all students for a world that's diverse, global, and interconnected. I was at a dinner not too long ago. I was at the University of Chicago Booth School of Management dinner. And we were celebrating a number of their alumni. So it was a big alumni event. Boy, I tell you what, boy, any business school deans or faculty in the room here today? If I show of hands, any? None in the business school? Boy, I tell you what, nobody throws a party like those business schools. They had the corporate donors and the sponsors and they had ice sculptures and all types of shenanigans going on at this thing. And they were acknowledging 3 of their noted alumni. One was being acknowledged for corporate leadership. One was being acknowledged for not-for-profit social sector leadership. And another was being acknowledged for being an alum leader, a young leader. And my friend had won the Young Leader Award, Michael Armstrong, who's a global vice president with Viacom and BET. And so Mike had won this award, and we were all there as his friends to support him. And we were sitting at his dinner, just as you're sitting at these dinners, at this lunch, around a table. And I was having this conversation, and I was still at Wisconsin, had not left yet Wisconsin. And everybody's going around, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? And when the conversation comes to what do you do and you're the chief diversity officer and you're with a whole table of folks that don't look like you, you don't quite necessarily know how to go there, right? Everybody is not Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., right? You don't quite necessarily know how to go there, right? And so I'm sitting there at the table and, I'm drinking my wine and this guy and, white male, he had red hair, some real snazzy glasses, very well-tailored suit. He leans in, he says to me, so what do you do? And I said, I work at the University of Wisconsin. I said, I'm, vice provost for diversity and blah, blah, blah. And when you say that, he's like, okay. Do you get oh, that's nice. Next topic. Or do you get something different? And so I said to the brother, I said, I work at the university, I do this, that, and the third. And he did this. He leaned in and he said my favorite thing. Students, faculty, staff, leaders, community leaders in the room, this is the best thing to say in any conversation. Can you say more? Because the notion of having someone saying more is about first seeking to understand and then to be understood. And there's always such power in that, particularly when we talk about moving beyond our bias to truly enable community. How do we first seek to understand, then to be understood? Not leading with your narrow thoughts of what is, but embracing the possibilities of what could be by hearing someone. So the brother leaned in and said, could you say more? I said, oh my goodness, of course I can say more. Where shall I begin? And so I said to him, I said, I do this and I do that, and we're working on these initiatives and that initiatives. He said, I had no idea there were persons like you doing this work in higher education. He said, I had heard about, we know about chief diversity officers in the corporate sector. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I am a managing partner for one of the top 5 global management consulting firms in the world. And he said, I lead the mergers and acquisitions area for this firm. And he said to me, I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing at the university level. He said, and this is the reason why. He said, number one, he said, we can't find enough of the talented, diverse candidates that we want to hire. So that you're doing things to help us expand that pipeline, that we can find folks that are diverse, not just in terms of global international diversity, but are domestically diverse in terms of African Americans and Latinos and natives. He said, that is wonderful. The second thing he said was more interesting. He then said, I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, he said, because what we found is that the domestic students that we're recruiting, they oftentimes don't have the cultural skills to interact across difference that we want them to have. He said they don't have the competency skills. So that it's becoming an increased priority in your world is great. He said, because your graduates are my students that show up in my environment that I have to make sure are able to perform at a high level. He then said something that was even more interesting. And he starts speaking into the culture generationally around immediacy versus resilience and grit. One of my favorite topics is to talk about a growth mindset. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. earlier, they talked about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. That you approach life knowing that life has infinite possibilities that are there for all of us if you are willing to humble yourself to what it takes to win and to pursue that pathway with grit and resilience and courage. He said, these young persons that I'm seeing, they want everything now. They want to just key it in and just get it today. They get there, they think they know everything, they want to get promoted. He said, it's resilience that gets you there. And he said, the difference that I've seen is the international students have it in spades. He said, because they had to work so hard to get here. And he said there was a hunger there, you know. And so when I start to flip that and think about what we're doing in these environments and how we're trying to educate folks for a global knowledge economy, we've got to be giving them those skills. We've got to be giving them those experiences, whether that's study abroad, whether that's service learning, whether that's intergroup dialogue, whether that's general education diversity requirements in courses, not just, any class will fulfill the requirements, but actually having some learning goals that we want to accomplish, which is creating a context where folks are looking at the world, not just through their perspective, but through multiple perspectives, that they're having to find a way to think empathetically about what others are feeling, because we know socio-emotional intelligence is more important in many regards to long-term success than cognitive ability. How do we create these environments to do that?